go ahead and get rolling with our session here. We had a great session yesterday afternoon, and wanted to follow. We scheduled 2 sessions. Both of them are quite full, and I think there's a lot of interest in the new tool that we have to start the launch process for. So we appreciate all of you taking the time out to join and listen and hear about this new tool. I think there'll be, your next steps will be different depending on what type of provider you are, but that's what we're here to talk through today. It's about exactly what the tool is and how it can be a benefit to housing support providers and other providers. So I want to just also just mention, you probably saw the bar at the top of your screen that says that this is being recorded. You need to know that we are recording for this session for posterity. So if you don't want to be recorded, I don't know what we would be recording since we're not we're not doing audio questions, but just so you know, we want to make sure that you know that it's being recorded. So in any event, let's get started here. So I'm working here at DHS in Minnesota. We're literally kind of spread in 2 different regions of the country here to do this morning. We have a partner that we're working with that's in Alabama. CGI is a company that DHS is contracting with, and I'll say more about that. And they're actually going to run the bulk of this session today because they'll talk through some of the real operational steps for providers who are interested in learning more about how the system will function. So they'll come on in just a few minutes, but I wanted to just take a couple minutes at the very beginning here to talk about the DHS perspective, kind of where we are and what this tool is. So first of all, I just want to mention that this tool it's kind of a long time in the making. It's something that's been in development for a long time, and really where it started as a response to stakeholder feedback. Yeah. So we heard from providers out and about who are providing services, particularly housing support services, about the need or some of the gaps for connecting people to openings, especially when it comes to people being able to connect with openings in board and lodge settings. Board and lodges with and without services. As many of you may know, we have 2 different categories of board and lodges that use housing support. Some just do room and board, and some do room and board plus services. So one of the main calls that we get in our area from people that are experiencing a gap in their housing is, I just don't know where to go. Can you give me a really good list of places with openings, or a place, even just a list? And that's been a real gap for us. So we are, that is this tool, the HB101 Places tool that you're going to hear about today, is a response to that need. But this is just the beginning. This is not live yet. This is not to be super clear, we don't have a link that's going to be live for people tomorrow to start looking for real-time openings, because this is sort of an ongoing effort to get providers into the system, and then to bring providers into the process for being able to post your openings. And then even then we have sort of this a strategic approach to bring in different provider types at different times. So this is just the beginning. We did some user testing prior to having this mostly final version. It is a final version, but it's something that we will be able to make some changes to over time. But we incorporated, we had some board and lodge providers that really helped us test. We had some different, some state staff, and we had some other, county and tribal staff that helped us to be able to make sure that it was that the tool itself was going to meet people's needs. But we sure want to have feedback as time goes by about how it's working for people. But for us to really be able to know how it's working is to actually go live with it and make it something that providers can actually start to enroll in and start to post their openings. So we're going to talk through kind of what that process looks like over the next few minutes. So providers, the first step, I think, is for providers to enroll their agency. And that's something that that would be a takeaway for many of you today is, okay, the next thing I can do is I can contact CGI, and I can go ahead and get my agency enrolled, and their contact information. They'll talk through what that process looks like. It's not necessarily going to be all housing support providers that are able to get all the way through the process of enrolling, because as a function of the design and as a function of the plan that we have for onboarding, we're really prioritizing first board and lodge and board and lodge with special services
Is now joining.
to enroll first based on stakeholder feedback. Along with that, adult foster care is also included. You'll be able to see that adult foster care is another category that's able to go ahead and create their enrollment. There's other categories of services that we have, or types of housing support providers that we have, that might need a little tweaking because they're so characteristically a little bit different. It might not always represent a particular unit that's available. For instance, with our site-based and scattered site supportive housing, site-based might have a little bit more awareness about a particular unit that might be that's under their control, and they might know a little bit more about that. But some of this scattered site supportive housing might not be quite there in terms of how that could functionally work in here. But that's the goal, is to hear and see and develop in that direction to include as many different types of providers as possible. So the way, just in terms of implementing this, I think of this, I mentioned this yesterday, I think it's a fairly good analogy to think of. It's kind of like driving a stick shift. You have to kind of work, you kind of have to do that feel of like accelerating and letting off the clutch. You don't want to pop the clutch because you don't want to kill your car. Well, we don't want to do that with HB101 places. We want to launch at the right time, launch live at the right time to get, because what the right time looks like is having providers who have real-time openings that are ready to go and ready to post in there, so that people can start searching at the right time. If we send out a live link, it is a live website, but if we send out a live link today, there wouldn't be any inventory because we don't have providers that are in the system. So that is where we are at in the process, is we want to now start bringing the right providers into the HB101 places system. And that's where CGI comes in, because there's a whole effort to onboard. And there's an outbound effort, and then there's also an inbound possibility for providers to go ahead and start that process. So I do also want to mention that as it relates particularly to a new basis of eligibility that we have for housing support, many of you might also be aware that for people that are in residential behavioral health treatment, and that includes IRTs and crisis settings, and it includes SUD treatment. If people are in a licensed residential treatment and leaving with housing instability, we have a new professional statement of need that allows treatment staff to indicate that that person has housing instability when they leave. And if a person doesn't have stable housing when they're leaving residential treatment, there's an option for them to get up to a 3-month window of eligibility for housing support without looking at income, without looking at assets, and the fact that they're transitioning out of a residential treatment is the basis of eligibility for that person. So what that means is this could potentially be a really good tool over time here as we get providers in for people to be able to look at what are the real-time openings for me as I'm leaving residential behavioral health treatment and moving into a place. Where can I go? And this is one of the connections that we really want to make, is between residential treatment providers and people and housing support providers out in the community. It's not necessarily exclusively housing support, because there's other ways. People might have other ways to pay for housing. So it could be that the characteristics of the place are really what work for a person. Maybe they have a certain type of services that are available there. So it's not necessarily going to always be housing support for every single person. So we're not creating a housing support referral system, though there is a lot of overlap between this is where the gap is in terms of, I guess, is the best way to say it, for referral streams, because there are other things out there that refer that get people referred to other different types of housing that use some that use housing support, some that don't. So the idea is we want to make sure that there's a pathway also into some of the housing support places that don't traditionally have that referral stream. Anyways, one of the last things, I think if you want to forward to that next slide there, one of the things that I wanted to just cover is kind of the idea that counties and tribes can also use this. It's kind of self-evident. The benefits are self-evident, that it's for a person. If you can find real-time openings, that's a real benefit. For a provider, it's if you can post your real-time openings, it's a benefit because people you maybe potentially are cutting down on calls to say, hey, do you have an opening? What are your criteria? Hold on just a second. My screen timed out. I'm going to log back in. That means I'm not sure if people heard that my screen timed out and I was logged out for a second. So if I had a little gap there, sorry about that. But anyways, the third angle that you could have on this is as a county or tribal staff. And there is some reporting that's built in, or reporting functionality and features that are built into the HB101 Places system for counties and tribes that are doing some quality assurance work and doing some oversight work with housing support providers. That has been, that feedback was incorporated, and that's something that was included in the design and development of the system. So with that said, I want to just emphasize kind of just to give a preview of what the next steps might be for you. And then I think CGI will also talk through this. But it's really important to know that we have a very specific outbound process for board and lodge providers specifically, with and without services. So we have given that data to CGI to start getting in touch with board and lodge providers. So you may be hearing from them. That doesn't mean that if you are a board and lodge provider or any type of provider, you can call CGI anytime, and you can say, listen, I want to get my name in there. I want to use this. What we want is a successful system with as many provider types as possible. Again, we have sort of a narrow window right now, but that'll be expanding over time. So even if you're not a board and lodge provider, or if you're not an adult foster care provider, you still can call CGI, and you can still get your organizational information in there. But what we have to, what we'll have to do is broaden the number of provider types that can post their openings, because there's a certain point in the process where you have to identify what provider type you are. And those are not, that's not something, we don't want people that aren't adult foster care to say that they're adult foster care. So we want to just say, okay, we know about you, and then we can get back in touch with you. If you're in the system already, we can get back in touch with you and say, okay, we're ready to move forward a little bit. We want to get more of your information so that we can, so that you can start putting your openings here. So that's the plan. So I'm going to just introduce CGI here. CGI is a great partner that we've been working with. And that's one of the unique features about HB101 Places, is this is not something that I will be managing, or not something, because, goodness knows, people don't want me to manage this kind of a thing. What we're relying on is the expertise and the support and the capacity for CGI to be able to provide good customer service and to be able to help people understand what the process looks like for enrolling, and to support that effort over time. So DHS is in a contract with CGI to provide this service, and they are working and have done a great job of working on this up to now, and they'll continue to support it over time. So with that said, I'm going to just transfer, I guess I don't really have to transfer anything, but I'm just going to turn it over to CGI to talk through some of the nuts and bolts of the system. Thanks so very much. I appreciate it. And by the way, we will have some time. I think we'll probably have, based on yesterday, we'll probably have around 15-ish minutes for questions at the end. So if you've got questions as we go forward, put your questions in the chat box, because I don't believe we'll be unmuting people's phones to be able to do that.
Good morning. Hello and welcome. My name is Crystal Caldwell, and I work with CGI. Thank you, Jeremy, for the introduction. Minnesota DHS has contracted with CGI to provide housing support services. If you should have any questions or need assistance with HB101 Places support, we are available by phone and or email to help you. Our contact information will be available to you at the end of the presentation, and I believe it was also included in the invitation that you got sent for this session. For your benefit, these sessions will be recorded for training purposes, and we will have these available to you after the sessions. We will open the floor up for questions after the presentation. It's best if you could send those questions through the chat. And just a quick reminder, we have placed everyone on mute to avoid feedback, and if you choose to, you can close your camera. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Virginia Robinson. She's going to present an overview of the HB101 Places site to give you a further look into the site. If you have any questions, again, hold those until the end and we'll take those through chat. We thank you for attending today. And I wanted to tell you that after this session, you will be receiving a brief survey, and we would appreciate that if you would give us some feedback on the presentation session. Thank you again for your time and for attending. We appreciate it.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Virginia Robinson. I'm going to walk you through actually using our HB101 Places website, and we'll start off with where it is located. So the HB101 Places will be integrated in the Housing Benefits 101 website. There will be a link that can be that will be located in the navigation bar or the content section. As Jeremy mentioned, this link will not be available immediately through this, as this is where the users will access HB101 Places. You as a housing provider will access the website through the initial registration link in the email, and then you can save the website from there. But we will begin the registration with the initial link that you will receive. A little bit about what HB101 Places, or who HB101 Places serves. The general public, as we mentioned, those are the individuals actually seeking housing, their advocates and circles of support. Housing provider, which would include organizational and site administrators, and then the statewide administrators, including DHS staff and our housing support team. The statewide administrators, those of us on our team, will have full access to user and facility records and reports, and this will allow us to assist you with creating your administrator profiles for the housing providers. We'll be able to create and edit those organizations for you and authorize your housing provider accounts. We can also assist with creating and editing programs, units, and vacancies. This will be the specific information about your housing opportunities. If you need assistance with adding or editing information, we can assist you with that. For housing providers, these would be your accounts that are associated with your specific organization. You will only need to have one provider account for each of your provider users. And within that account, you will list all of your housing properties within your organization.
Andrew is now joining.
You'll be able to create and edit organizational information, and then also the information associated with your housing program, your units, and your available units and vacancies. The general public will be those individuals seeking housing. The public can actually have two different ways of accessing HB101 Places. They can create an account, and with that account, they can save their searches and filter sets. They also have the ability to select a favorite, and they can browse and search. The users, however, do not have to have an account to use HB101 Places. Those individuals seeking housing can browse and filter property listings and contact the housing providers directly from those searches. Our next steps will actually talk about how you're going to create your housing provider account. So the statewide administrators, including our team with housing support services, we will assign those organizational privileges to the housing providers for registration. So when you're ready to join HB101 Places, you can contact our help desk by phone or email, and also we'll be making some outreach calls, and we can determine that you're ready for registration. We will send you an email with your account link And from there, you will actually register your account. So once you click the link and you open HB101 Places site, you'll click the register button. It'll look like the picture here on this slide. And then from there, you will enter your email, create a password, select your organization type. Then you'll actually close that screen and return to HB101 Places and click the sign in button from the right-hand menu. Once you've signed in, you will actually be able to then select your profile and see your roles and make changes to your housing provider account. Within your housing provider account, there are some levels. So you begin with your organization. That would be the company or group that owns the housing programs. That might be national, statewide, regional, or limited to a single property. The customer side of the interface does not detail organization. So when a user seeking housing is looking for housing opportunities, they would not see these at the organization level, but rather the program level, which would be the specific housing opportunities, each operated by an organization. And the program could be a single house, a facility, or a group of buildings. It's defined by the population rather than the location. Within the programs, there are units. So these are the specific resident type. And each type of resident for the program would have a different unit listed. It does not list every room individually, but rather the type of residence. And then lastly, the vacancies, which would be the available units for each program. So this is just a graph showing that information. So your housing provider account would begin with the organization. Within your organization, you can create a program for each of your housing opportunities for a target population. Within that program, you would list all of your specific units, including the resident types of those programs. And then your vacancies are those available housing opportunities. The vacancies will be updated in real time. So if you have a vacancy that is filled, you can update that with your housing provider account. After logging in, after signing in, you will see the housing provider dashboard. This details the organizations that you are associated with, along with the programs under those organizations. And here you're able to edit, to add details, add or manage contacts, add unit types and vacancies, images, services, and all of this is located under the housing provider dashboard. When you first log in to HB101
Is now
Places,
exiting.
the dashboard option is in the banner area after logging in. So once you click your housing provider dashboard, you will see a list of all the organizations that you are associated with. This dashboard sort of sums up the programs that you've created, and it has a field here for the programs, the beds or the units that you have created, and then the vacancies that you have listed currently. To add a program, there is a button in that dashboard area where you would click add a program. And then under this section, this is where you would also see, once the program has been added, the number of vacancies or units available. Also, you as a user can mark a program as a favorite. The end user, the individual seeking housing, will also be able to mark programs as favorites. And then also this section details the details selected for the program are shown here once they're entered. To add or edit program details, when you create a new program, you will add a program, and then again, this is from your dashboard, and you'll enter information such as the program name, a description, your website, phone, and email. This is the contact information that is shown when a user is seeking housing and they're filtering the results. That contact information is available there for the user to directly contact you. Address, and then as well as the points of contact for this program. So this, you can add many points of contact if you have several housing provider contacts that you need to include. You can have a primary contact and then additional contacts here. Every time you add someone here, then they will also get that registration link to register and create their own housing provider account. To add a unit, you will click the Add Unit button, include the name, bedroom, status, active, and then other unit information here. You always have the opportunity to cancel or save. So if you're not ready to add the unit, you can cancel and go back to your program information, or once you are ready to add a unit, then you will save this information and then you can continue adding more units, whatever it applies to your program. You can also add pictures by dropping or browsing your computer for your unit pictures here. You can add up to 3 for each one. And then from here, we'll start getting into the specific services provided within your housing opportunities. This section includes some checkboxes as well as text fields for each section that you can add more specifics to. Once you've selected the services, you will click Save. At any time, you can come back and edit those if they've changed or you want to make updates, and then save again. The next portion to creating your program information would be to add or edit the rules associated. Again, this section has some checkboxes as well as some drop-down options and also some free text comment boxes. The daily life section includes a text box for cultural considerations, also includes some drop-down boxes regarding meals, and then again, you can select check boxes from some options that are already listed or add some additional comments in the text boxes. And then the location, so you've entered the address when you initially created the program information. This is just more detail about the actual location of your housing, including parking, and then also it includes a map. To use HB101 Places, once you've initially logged in, as I mentioned earlier, there is the dashboard option, which will actually take you to your specific housing provider information, housing program information, but also there are some quick links here, such as a quick start. Those are questions to help find potential housing. This is extremely useful for the end users, those individuals seeking housing. Also, there is a very helpful video giving a quick how to use HB101 Places, some basic information about HB101 Places, and then also on this initial home screen is where you will see the filter, so you can narrow down the list of results shown there in the housing opportunities. These filters would include all of the services that you've selected. So those options that were available for you to select, those are available as filters. So if you've selected a service, then an end user can select that service as a filter and see your housing opportunity there. The user can, as I mentioned before, create an account and save that save filter set, or the housing seeker can actually use HB101 Places just as a guest and not create an account. So for troubleshooting, so this is for housing providers when you're ready to create your HB101 Places account. If you need assistance with updating your program or unit vacancy information, adding those programs. If you need assistance with adding additional points of contact for your housing program, we can assist with all of your questions. And our email is listed here as well as our phone number. So at this time, we can start with questions. If you'd like to select the meeting chat option, it looks sort of like a text bubble in your menu there, and you can enter any questions that you have.
There's a question about, this is Jeremy at DHS. There is a question that came in about on the top of the professional statement of need. That's what the PSN is. The question is, on the professional statement of need, is the housing provider name at the top of the first page the housing option that you're referring someone to? It could be. So the professional statement of need is, we have a new one. I can't remember if it still says the same thing. I think actually we changed that. So that take a look at the new. In fact, I'm going to send a link.
Exiting.
I'll put a link to the new professional statement of need in the chat box so people can take a look at that, because I think we might have tweaked that. Let's see. Do we still need to send a request to CEYS? I believe that's coordinated entry. I'm not familiar with which one is, the acronym is CEYS. I know CAHS, but I believe that that's coordinated entry question, and no, there's no change to coordinated entry policy or how people get referred to providers that are serving a person that is right now experiencing a housing crisis, and if it's a resource that needs to go through coordinated entry, at this point that's still there's no change to that. So
Lynn Bullion.
There is the question, is this a free
exiting.
site? It is a free site. There's also a question confirming if if someone has programs all over the state, can we assign different contacts per program? Yes, you can have multiple contacts per program.
So I am going into, I just sent a link to the eDocs.
We do have a question about how to sign up as a provider. So we are very happy for you to sign up, and you can contact our housing support services to do that either by email or phone. And we can create your initial provider login or initial provider registration rather, send you the registration link for you to create your login. And from there you can sign in.
This is Jeremy at DHS. Can people hear me still? I want to make sure people can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks. So I posted a link to the new professional statement of need in the chat, so you can, if anybody can go and take a look at that. But there is back to the original question about the housing provider name. We added if available. So yes, if you know the person, the place where the housing provider, the housing support provider, or the housing stabilization services provider name. It could be either one of those at this point, because the professional statement of need would be used for a couple of different things now. But if you know the name of the housing provider, you can put that, but that should not prevent a person from having their eligibility determined for housing support. If they're submitting the professional statement of need as part of their application for housing support, not knowing who the housing support provider is not, they won't be able to have it approved until the financial worker knows where a person is going to be living, but it should not prevent the person from applying. There's a question about, will there be resources for rent barriers for arrears unpaid? That's not something that HB101 Places addresses. There are other resources that are available, though limited. So that's not something, the direct answer to that is that's not there is not an additional pot of resources that becomes available with the introduction of HB 101 places.
Hello?
There's a question, will this PowerPoint be available for reference following the training? The training session has been recorded, and we are working to get the training session posted to you so that you can have this for reference.
There's a question about the filtering. I think is a really relevant question for a lot of people, about the how you can, if you're helping a person as you're a residential treatment provider, and you're helping a person look for options.
Is now exiting.
Can you talk, CGI? Can you talk a little bit about what the filter functionality is? The question is about finding, being able to
Yes.
drill down specifically
So
to
the
chemical dependency
filters
program.
that the users will be able to see includes all of those services and rules and daily life options that you have to select there when you're creating your program. So once you've made those selections, then the end users also see those options as a filter set. So they can pick some of those options, and then if it is one that you've selected, then your housing opportunity will show in the search.
This is Jeremy again. I want to just mention one thing I didn't mention earlier, about other existing pathways for people, that are other existing resources that sort of do similar things. So one really specifically that I want to talk about is Hennepin Housing Key. There are a lot of providers that provide services in Hennepin County, and Hennepin Housing Key is still going to exist. We are working with Hennepin County to try and make these two sites work together. That's something that's ongoing. So just to be super clear, this is not replacing any existing resource. This is something that is intended to take that same functionality for Hennepin Housing Key and take that to the statewide level. And then there's a question about screening of entities that want to register within the system. I can tell you from our perspective, there's not a screening because this is just basically putting your information out there. CGI, do you have a comment about that?
We just do have a list, as you mentioned at the beginning, a list of providers that we will begin outreach with. However, if there are other providers that would like to reach us, then yes, we will give them the information on creating your provider account. But you will be the housing providers will be the ones entering the actual provider program information.
There's another question here about the professional statement of need. Are we using the new professional statement of need going forward? I can tell you two-part answer. Number one, if a person has an old professional statement of need, it's totally fine for them to use that, and people are not losing any eligibility based on the fact that there is a new professional statement of need out there. However, if a person wants to access any of the new resources that are available and attached to the new version of the professional statement of need, they would need to get an updated PSN. So they might, some people, if they want to access the new Medicaid housing stabilization services, or if they are in residential behavioral health treatment and are exiting and are having, and as they're exiting are having housing instability, those two things are specifically added to the new version of the PSN. So somebody would need those to be eligible for those new services. And I'm not sure what the question is really about. Can the process be handled quickly? As it relates to HB 101, certainly there are issues in different places with the timeliness or the process for applying and then having a case processed and approved for housing support. So that would be kind of a separate issue that we would certainly want to know if there's a particular outstanding issue for us to be able to respond. And then question about, will you notify us somehow when this is up and running? Good question. I'm going to also open it up for CGI to answer. But what our intent is to continue to have a lot of communication about this for next steps. For I think any providers that do engage with CGI and get their information in there, even if you're not a provider that is able to start right now entering your information, it's as far as real-time openings, because you're not in one of the first step provider categories. We still would love for you to contact CGI and get your organizational information in there so that we can reach back out to you to say, as a next step, like, okay, now here's what we're doing. Now here's what we're doing. So yes, it should be a two-way communication, and then specific to when it's live. That's where we don't have an exact date, but I think that we're targeting to try for sometime right around September 1st to have the searchability, to have providers enrolled, and then sometime during the month of August get what's projected to be openings for September. So to try and target, and again, that's sort of like a moving target because we're dealing with real-time information, and real-time information by definition changes regularly. So that's where we're problem solving around the best way to do that. But the target right now is for right around September the 1st for that.
Yes, once we have the information with CGI, we will have the contact information on file so that we can send follow-up emails pertaining to, especially when the system is up and running. Someone asked about our phone number. The phone number to the help desk, to the HB101 Places Support Help Desk, is 1-855-333-8207.
So I'm not seeing a whole lot of new questions come in. We don't have to keep sitting here if we've covered the basics. So we're certainly happy to answer any other questions that come in. So if you've got questions, now would be the time to submit them to the chat box, and we can try and cover those.
If you happen to think of any questions after this session, we're happy to take the calls through the help desk. You also can email the support box, which is mnsupport@hb101places.com. That's mnsupport@hb101places.com, and we can answer your questions through the support help desk.
Lori
Is now exiting.
If we don't have
Janice
any
with
further
East African
questions
Housing Services.
this morning, I think this concludes our call. We just want to thank you for your time and participation today.
Is now
And please reach out to
exiting.
our help desk. We're happy to help and answer any questions that you might have.
Multiple
Thank you again for
people are
coming.
now exiting. Multiple people are now exiting. Multiple people are now exiting.